Hello and welcome. In this video we want to deploy our Reddit research MCP tool. So here you can see we are asking cursor the question, are there any security concerns with the MCP model context protocol? Check on Reddit and save the answer to Notion. So here it's calling the search Reddit tool, sending this query to Reddit, retrieves 10 results and looks at the top 5 comments per result. And there we have the result. Now it's calling the search again. It wants to refine its answer. So the important thing here in this video, we want to focus on actually deploying this code on a server with authentication. In the last video you have seen how to create MCP tools and how to run it locally. Here we will run it with the HTTP protocol for the server deployment. So this will be a single user application. It gets much more complex with a multi-user application. In a further video we will cover this aspect as well. So in this video, the single user application, and there you can see it has saved the answer to our Notion database. So perfect. As always, you can find the link to the code in the description if you want to fork it or copy it. So if you want to know how to deploy such MCP tools with authentication on a server, then keep watching. Let's jump right into it. So let's start with a quick rundown of our MCP tools. For our Reddit research agent, they have the functionalities to fetch the top posts from a subreddit and then also the function to generally search posts within subreddits, one or multiple, and a general search function. So without limitation of a subreddit, just send a search query against the whole of Reddit. And we everywhere have a limit function, so we want only a fixed number of posts, and the comment limit. We don't need to always look at every comment. And each of these tools outputs a list with a dictionary in this format where we have the title, the actual content of the post, URL, and number of comments, link, and the actual comments in the list. So every function has the standardized output. And finally we have the Notion MCP tool, which will save the question which we will give to the agent, the answer he created, the search query which the agent sent to the Reddit tools, and the actual sources consisting of the title and URL. So my previous video I already showed you how to create these tools. It's not complicated, pretty simply actually, and also how to create the Notion integration. So we don't need to look at these functions in detail now. What we need to look at is how to create the authentication. So for that, let's jump to the MCP-SDK GitHub page. Now here in the GitHub page we can go down to the authentication part, and MCP implements OAuth 2.1, pretty much enterprise industry standard. It has many advantages. Basically you're decoupling the complex authentication part from your server by sending the actual authentication to another provider. For example, the user can log in with his Google account or with his GitHub account and connect through this. You have probably already authenticated dozens of times in exactly this manner. So again, the authentication will be done at another service, then just a token gets sent back to our server, and our server just defines which functionalities it needs. For example, if we would have a multi-user application for Reddit and our Notion tool, then we would need the read authentication for Reddit and the write authentication for Notion, so that each user can write in his specific Notion database and read with his Reddit account. And the actual authentication happens at the provider, and we only verify the token. So the complex part is not on the server side. So here we simply need to implement our token verifier function, and if we look into it, so if you look into the token verifier, we see we only actually have to create this verify token function which returns an access token. So if you look at the access token, it's simply the token, client ID, scopes is what I explained right now. What privileges we need? Do we need read? Do we need write access? So now let's go back to the code and I'll show you how I implemented this. So here you can see our simple token verifier, which inherits from the token verifier which you just saw on the MCP GitHub. Again, we're working with our single user application, so there's only one token involved, and we get this from the environment, our MCP API token, which you need to create, let's say a 32 length complex password, so to speak, and we are initializing it, getting it from the environment, and the verify token function simply gets the token from the user when he makes an API request with a bearer token, and we're checking checking first if we haven't set the token in our environment, then the verification will fail, of course, since we can't check against our token. Therefore, we need to deny the requests. Otherwise, everyone with any token or non-token could access our endpoint. So if we somewhere made an error and didn't define our environment variable, then no one should be able to access our MCP tools here. But if we have given our token in the environment, then we simply check, is the token which the user has sent exactly the same as the token from our environment? If yes, then we return the access token. If not, then we return none and the user gets an access denied answer. And the access token, we return the token, the client ID, and the scopes, which we have talked about a minute ago. In our single user application, we actually don't need these scopes, since obviously I am the only user, or you are the only user in this case, and therefore you of course want to access all the necessary scopes or all the MCP functions. This will again be relevant in a further video when we set it up for a multi-user application, and that's the point where the OAuth 2.1 really shines. So here the fast MCP server, we are initializing it obviously with host and port, since we are working with the streamable HTTP protocol from MCP right now, not standard IO anymore. We write stateless to true, and to token verify we just enter an instantiation of our simple token verifier class, and authentication settings need to be provided as well, imported from MCP, and we can simply set issuer URL and resource server URL to the local host. Required scopes, again the same as the scopes here, and also down here I created an arg parse where we can define the transport protocol method, either standard IO if you want to use this locally, or for a server deployment HTTP, which will initialize the streamable HTTP transport. Now if you want to set up this Reddit research tools, you also need the client ID, client secret, and user agent from Reddit. For that, in the README I have a link defined. You simply have to be logged in your Reddit account, go to this link, create a new application, and then get the client secret and client ID. Okay, the next important thing for a server deployment is of course a Dockerfile. Almost always when deploying something on a server you want to work with Docker, so everything is standardized. We import from Python Slim base image, and we need to install UV, copy the private project, the uv.log, then synchronize our UV, which will create the environment with the necessary versions of all the required packages, copy our main Python file, and expose the port on which everything will be running, 8000 in this case, and finally have our command uv run reddit qa to Notion MCP with the transport HTTP flag. So before deploying the code, you of course need the API key. I provided you a generate API key file. You can simply run it with Python 3 generate API key, and it will simply have the default value of 32 characters length and creates one API key. So this is a pretty good complex API key. Now store it somewhere secret, and you will need it for the deployment later. So now let's jump right to the deployment part. So for the deployment we are going to use railway.com. You can of course use any other provider. Railway has a free tier of 30 days, and so you can simply sign up. I will put a link in the description. Then just go to the dashboard. As you can see, we have already tried other projects, so simply click on new, and here in the Reddit Q&A to Notion GitHub repository you can simply click on fork, so you fork it to your GitHub, and then simply when you connect your GitHub you can just click here on the respective repository to import it. And then since we already provide the Docker file, it will automatically start to deploy it. Now we need of course to define our variables, which secrets we need. Again, the Reddit client secret, client ID, user agent, the MCP API key which we just created, the Notion API token, and Notion database ID. There are also two more secrets we need. You can also simply use the raw editor here and paste it inside. And the two new which we need are HTTP proxy and also HTTPS proxy. Unfortunately, YouTube and Reddit are blocking requests from servers to circumvent spam. So therefore, we also need to define a proxy, and the proxy credentials you can get from WebShare. So WebShare also has a free tier. You can simply create an account here, log in. Now here on WebShare, the important thing when you click on proxy list, we need to get the rotating proxy endpoint. And here in the README, I already have defined how it needs to look. So you need to get the username, password, proxy server, and port. You will get it from WebShare for free. And then simply add the secrets here. I will do it right now, and then we will continue. So now after providing the variables, the secrets, we can click on deploy, and it will automatically deploy our code. So here in the build logs, we can see it's creating the image, it's providing the authentication variables which we just defined. It built quite fast, and now it has finished the building of the image. It's starting the container, and there our service is running. Our tools are available. Now the next thing we need to do, we need to go on the settings here and click on generate domain. We need to provide the port 8000 which we defined earlier, generate the domain, and this will be the link through which we will connect to our server. Okay, so let's jump back to Cursor and connect our server. In Cursor again, under preferences, Cursor settings, and tools and integrations, you can simply click on add custom MCP, and here we will define our servers. So it will look like this. We define the name again, type streamable HTTP, and here is the server URL which we just have copied. We need to provide HTTPS and /MCP/. This is important. Again, here provide the API key which we earlier created. I'm going to do that right now. After you have provided the API key, you can see Cursor has already connected to the server and sees 4 tools are available. So now we can test it out. You can of course use any other MCP client, LangGraph, or whatever you want, any agent. I'm just using here Cursor for simplicity. So now let's test it out. Check on Reddit what's the best LLM agent framework in 2025 and save the answer to Notion. So there you see it sees the MCP tools. Now we are calling search Reddit with best LLM agent framework 2025, getting 10 results. 8 comments. You can see some warnings here. These are right now irrelevant since we have the single user application. The problem here is that we have a synchronous implementation, and for our Reddit search tool, if we would have multiple users or multiple clients connecting, then we would need to define it in an asynchronous way. But right now it's not relevant. You can see it successfully fetched multiple posts, and now it's creating the answer. So it will save it to Notion right now. There we see the answer perfect. Our question, the answer the LLM has provided based on the search query to Reddit with the respective sources and the links. So perfectly there we have the answer. Pydantic AI, Comic Agents, LangGraph, these are the best known right now. And with that we have implemented our Reddit research agent. Simply as that, deployed it on the server with simple authentication. Now in a further video we're going to cover the more complex part for multi-user authentication, but for now you can deploy your MCP tools with simple authentication on your server. So I hope you had fun watching and could learn something. Let me know in the comments if there are any aspects of MCP you want to see covered here in this series. And with that, click the like button, click the subscribe button, and see you in the next video.